Hello, and welcome to today's special webinar event. We're talking about ransomware jail, how to make bail. Today's webinar is sponsored by Recovery Point and Pure Storage and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech Media, and I'm excited to be here to moderate a great conversation. Now, before we get to today's content, there are a few things you should know about this webinar. First off, we want this to be an interactive event for you. So we encourage any questions in the questions box in our webinar control panel. Not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. Second, in the handouts section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. We've got 4 PDF resources from Recovery Point and from Pure Storage, so be sure to download those. There are also links to the Actual Tech Media Guerrilla Guide Book Club and the Actual Tech Media Events Center. Third, at the end of this webinar, we will be awarding a $300 Amazon gift card to one lucky attendee on the live event. So prize terms and conditions are available at the bottom of the handout section. And one last point before we get started. One of the best benefits of this event is the opportunity to ask a question of our expert guests. So to help encourage your questions, we have a special additional prize, and that's another Amazon gift card, this one for $50 for the best question. At the end of the event, we'll look at all the questions, pick out the very best one, and contact that prize winner. And with that, let's get to today's timely conversation. So it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers today. And I'll bring them on as well. So we've got Jeff Judy, Chief Cloud Architect from Recovery Point. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Scott. Thanks.
And we've got Andrew Miller, Principal Systems Engineer from Pure Storage. Andrew, thanks for being here.
Likewise. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Well, let me turn it to Jeff quickly first. Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself and about Recovery Point.
Sure. I'm Jeff Judy. I'm the Disaster Recovery Chief Cloud Architect for Recovery Point, and I've been with Recovery Point for about 10 years now. And just a few quick notes about Recovery Point. We've been around for about 30 years. We've had our roots in the tape vaulting services way a long time ago, and as the years have passed, we've expanded into the traditional DR services, and over the last probably 15, 12 years, really expanded into the disaster recovery as a service, backup as a service, and co-location services. And I have a few slides just to get a little deeper into more of what we do.
Yeah, great. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Thanks. Okay. We're going to jump here. Sorry. So, we got disaster recovery services. Ransomware jail, how to make bail, right? We're going to talk a bunch about, best practice and what to do and how our services can help you make that bail. But a little bit about Recovery Point services is we've got 3 pillars that we're built off of. So we've got infrastructure services, recovery, and automation. Like I said, we've been in business for about 30 years. We cover everything from for recovery services from mainframe to the desktop. We offer DRAS services, BAS. We have data center interconnects between other facilities using our partners Megaport and PCPW. We also have dark fiber around the Washington, D.C. area and down into Northern Virginia to provide high-speed on-off ramps out of Equinix and their cloud exchange. So, we can provide those high-speed pipes into the hyperscalers like Google, Azure, and AWS. Like I said, we have co-location services. We offer storage replication, object storage, VTL services, and of course, we're still doing good old-fashioned tape too. We have data centers in around the Washington, D.C. area, in Pennsylvania, and we're just another one outside, just west of Chicago. And our flagship data center is located in Germantown, Maryland, and it's custom built, and it's Tier 3 certified, Uptime Institute certified. So, we like to think of ourselves as not the normal DRaaS company. We think we take pride in the disaster recovery services, and we think of ourselves as a bit extraordinary. So, if you take a look at what we're showing you here, that our NPS score is a plus 86. It's the highest among any of our competitors, and really reflects that we take pride in providing quality disaster recovery services, and our customers tend to give us very positive feedback. We are a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and if you were to drill into the X and Y axis, the Y axis part of it, we actually have ranked at the top, and that's in your ability to execute. So again, I think that reflects that we're passionate about providing exceptional disaster recovery services. I'll highlight that we excel at the complex environments. So a heterogeneous environment, we're going to support everything, like I said, from mainframe down to the desktop. That would include x86, AIX, IBM, P-Series, I-Series hardware, AS400, HPUX systems, mainframe. So the more complex your environment, the better it is, the more we welcome the challenge. And we have 500 years of combined DR experience. So it seems like a lot, but I think that really shows that we have just a long tenured staff, and we're very knowledgeable. So our subject matter experts, or we have subject matter experts in all areas of IT, and we're able to help support in the disaster recovery efforts. And one more thing, we're 100% onshore support. So, we're open 24/7 to support your disaster recovery needs.
Super. Yeah. Hey, thanks for that overview. That was great. And Andrew, same question to you. Tell us a little about yourself and about Pure Storage.
Happy to. So, I think actually, Jeff, I wanted to say, I wanted to hear you say, I have 500 years of disaster recovery experience. Then I was going to say, but you wear it so well. But then you said we, so that I didn't even get to make the joke. But yeah, oh well, next time maybe.
Yeah.
So Andrew Miller, principal technologist here at Pure. Appreciate everyone joining us today. I especially appreciate the partnership with the Recovery Point. From a personal standpoint, principal technologist here means I kind of work with larger customers and partners, an overlay that focuses on roadmap and portfolio and vision strategy, liaison back to product management and engineering. So many folks back at, virtual HQ now, but, and spread around the world as well. Personally, customer for about 7 years, and partner, admin, engineer to architect, partner landscape for about 8 years, SC to manager director. So a lot of disaster recovery and replication planning, and you see what works. You make promises on the whiteboard, and if they come true, you get to come back, all that stuff. So, and building out a tech marketing team for a startup for a couple of years. We spent a lot of time in actually in a week or two a month in Palo Alto. As it relates to Pure, though, and I think this is where I should pull this slide up. So I didn't want to make it too long about Pure, except just to hopefully give you a sense that if you're not as familiar, if you've not looked at Pure for a couple years, the Pure 5 years ago that was the leader in the all-flash space, right, riding that wave with a focus on simplicity and also performance, has evolved and turned into, frankly, a company that's hard to ignore. We're the last standalone storage company there. It's $1 billion total. $1 billion in revenue. We're going to see the FY22 number soon. Very large customer account. The NPS moves around, but the top 1% of B2B companies. I love that, Jeff, you're emphasizing the NPS score. We focus on that, and there's even compensation tied to it. There's Gartner pieces there, customer growth, et cetera. The other piece that I like to highlight just from a general company standpoint is kind of this concept of evergreen. And that's the idea that whether it's in flash array, cloud block store capabilities, that the products that we provide get better and better over time, and there's not an eventual rip and replace after 6 years to shove it out the back door of the data center. One of the best stats that I like, and that's why I chose this one to show this, over time acquisition to modernizing, that 97% down at the bottom right. 97% of arrays purchased 6 or more years ago are still in production, and it's not that they're getting ready, like I said. It has been replaced and improved. It's still the same serial number. There's been more software capabilities. Keeps getting better. So I think that's hopefully I think that's enough about me, enough about Pure. I think I'll turn it back over.
Okay, yeah, no, that was a great a great intro for people who don't know Pure, and even for those of us who do. So, as far as the topic today and ransomware jail, it's always it's always useful to step back and hit with ransomware. And Andrew, I wonder if you can walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah. Like it shows there. I mean, there are statistics, and statistics are all over the place. They're all scary. Let's just be upfront.
Yeah.
Scary statistics, and you can find them wherever you look, kind of thing, like you see some on the screen. But when you peel it down a layer, I often like to go through the anatomy of an attack. And so, starting out with attackers getting access, often call this the point of infiltration. Okay, the best example I know, or the easiest example, is when I was presenting on this topic a couple years back in Toronto. For better or worse, you Google Andrew Miller ransomware, you'll find stuff going back 5-6 years now, sadly, on this topic. Like, it would be good if I hadn't been talking about this for so long. But gentleman in Toronto came, got an email, looked like it was from iTunes Store for a $50 app, $49.99. And hopefully for anyone listening, for Jeff, Scott, that's not make or break money, but it's also a what in the world did my wife or my kids or I buy like $50 for an app? Come on. The only thing wrong in that email was the dispute this purchase link. You'd have to look in the view source in the HTML to see that it was not going to an Apple site, but somewhere else. And if you weave that into a year ago, the U.S. government put out a bulletin about a 0-day Firefox vulnerability. So there's the question more of, especially 3, 4, 5 years ago, folks were more debating if people were going to gain access. The if, not when question has probably moved to the it's when, not if. But what shifted a couple years back, and I'm getting my cursor here, is that about 5 years ago was get in, encrypt stuff right away, ask for your money kind of thing. About 3 years ago, it started to shift to the idea of dwell time, gestation period. 2018, it was 206 days. 2019, 51 days. 2020, 2 to 6 weeks. Okay, these numbers vary because no one reports it super accurately because. But the idea that attackers are spending a while basically doing what I used to do on the partner side sometimes for like data center migrations, doing network and application discovery, and what's all the things that connect to the things, and can I get, as an attacker, to the holy grail of admin credentials at a domain level, and then potentially, more recently, what we're seeing at a storage and backup system level. So that's the last piece. Now, 3, 4 years ago, I'd say this was theoretically possible. Today, see, sadly, regularly, attackers that have gotten smart and saying, I want a ransom. What is going to prevent someone from paying the ransom? Well, if I destroy their means of data protection, well, it's more likely someone's going to pay. So they're literally doing that. I know a case of a hospital where the day after the storage admin went on vacation, we think they probably had a keylogger on his machine. They kicked off the encryption phase of the attack, and right before that, they actually deleted snapshots on the system. Let's be clear. I'm not taking pot shots at any storage company here, even myself. I'm talking about compromise of the credentials of the folks who literally hold the keys to the kingdom inside your organization. Right? These are hard problems to solve. At that point, asking for ransom, we now have to go back to the point of infiltration, not necessarily to restore. We can't restore any business back, weeks or months, but we need logging that goes back to figure out how the attacker got in, what all they got access to, so that we can start to restore as quickly as possible. And this is where I have a lot of respect. I actually used to do Super DLT and LTO, but if we're talking restoring large amounts of data very fast, tape is not necessarily the path, right? It has a very strong place in a 3-2-1, and I know you're going to go there, Jeff, later. It fits, but we're talking mass recovery scenarios really fast. We need other pieces, and that's where, fortunately, technology advances. I'm thinking of one Fortune 500. They got hit on their primary systems, DR systems, and their backup systems, and all they had left was tape, actually, which is better than nothing. But it took them literally weeks to get systems back online. Now, 2 last points here is that, one, like we talked about, our recovery point is hopefully right before the point of encryption, not the point of infiltration. And 2, I'm thinking of a different customer off the record. They have a funded Bitcoin account. They don't want to pay the ransom. There's actually another healthcare facility. But they believe that in the event of lives being at risk, they may not have a better choice. And these are hard things to think about, and that may very well be true for them. The catch is there's a very instructional lesson here out of Colonial Pipeline. You'll notice I'm telling stories. I'm leaving customer names out because sometimes customer names I used to use in the past became Pure customers later, so I don't want to give them bad press. But Colonial Pipeline, they were in the news a good bit. What we learned out of that was something that we'd known for a while, or we saw publicly, is that even if you pay the ransom, which they did, they actually paid the ransom after 3 hours after they detected they got hit, and then they ended up recovering from their existing backup and recovery systems because the decryption tool was slower than the methods they already had that they knew would take them days to weeks, which makes sense. Attackers aren't going to optimize the decryption tools as well. If we think about encryption and decryption, they're CPU bounded, they're IO bounded. These are intensive processes, so you don't just snap your fingers and say, let's decrypt everything really fast. They've done a lot of optimization to encrypt things, but not necessarily on the decryption side. So this is a hard landscape. And sometimes I find the most common questions are around kind of that point of encryption and filtration. Maybe I just have to pay the ransom, but there's no simple answers here. Although there's good stuff that we can help you with. I think that's the second half. But over to you, Jeff or Scott.
Yeah, no, I'll just say that was a really useful narrative, Andrew, and appreciate some of that historical perspective and some of the recent stuff that's happened. And Jeff, I understand you like to look at it from a framework perspective. So I wonder if you could bring that to us.
Yep, absolutely. So, I mean, Andrew, the anatomy of attack was spot on. And we like to look at this NIST cybersecurity framework as a way to mitigate that risk. I mean, you're never going to be able to. Nothing's ever bulletproof, and ransomware is becoming more sophisticated. So it's really more of a matter of when, not if you're going to get hit. But having a plan in place for recovery is it's really critical to being able to bring your business back online. So I'm going to step you through this cybersecurity framework. Just take a few minutes to step through it, but the 5 functions there are identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And ways to mitigate the risk with just stepping through with the identify part of that would be starting with something basic like having a valid asset database, like understanding what systems you have in your data center. Because once you know the inventory, you're able to run vulnerability scans, and then you'll have a better picture of where your gaps are, what's out of date patching wise, what is a high profile target that's open, has open vulnerabilities, open for attack. And also, once you have that list, you can start to group your systems into the critical nature, how they map back to your business, and what's critical for a particular system. So you can have we like to have group systems in tiering. So tier 1s, 2, 3s, and 4s, and then identify your recovery time and your recovery point objective associated with those tiers. So just as an example, you have some critical systems that you absolutely can't lose, or you begin to lose revenue if those systems are down. So you would classify those as tier 1 and say, I need those systems back online within an hour, and I can't lose more than maybe a few minutes of data, and that's your recovery point objective. So once you have those classifications, then you can move into the protection tier, and you can begin to build a design to how you're going to recover your systems. What order you're going to bring them in, what kind of services you're going to use. So, on the primary data sets, you can use Pure Storage to use use snapshotting for snapshotting your primary data sets. And that's going to give you a very rapid recovery approach. And Andrew's going to actually dive into that a little bit here in the next slide or next 2 slides. But, on top of a rapid recovery, a lot of times an attack might leave you in a state where you can't rapidly recover. You need a white environment, a clean environment that's sanitized or isolated before you start to bring systems back online. And so, you may need to look at alternatives to recovering from backups or different replicas in an alternate computing site. And then the third function here is detect. So what we like to tell customers or make recommendations is that you should set up some automation to where you can recover your backups and then run malware scans against those backups. It sounds rather simple, but I mean, it can save you a lot of headaches if you discover that sitting in your backup file is some type of malware that wasn't caught on the production side of things. You can go back, clean it out, or set up the isolated environment to clean it up first. And then, of course, the respond function is probably the most critical. So just building a plan, having a validated plan of what to do when the crisis hits. So if you don't have a plan and then the ransomware hits you, your teams are in crisis mode at that point. Your communication systems may be down, email might be down, mobile phone systems might be out. So being able to fall back to a plan and knowing that what teams and operations are executing at those critical points is key. If you didn't have that plan, you may make mistakes, cost your company valuable time in recovery, cost them revenue, and there's potential for loss of forensics data too. And then finally, recover. So that's key to the key to success of recovering your business, right? I mean, if you have the recovery plan in place and then execute on that. So, you're going to base it on your tiering structures, your tier 1, most critical, tier 2, maybe tier 3, you're restoring from backups. But many times you're going to need an alternate compute facility. So, look at us as Recovery Point. I mean, that's where we excel, providing these recovery solutions. And then you can blend these services. So you can blend services with us. Say you have a replication solution. So you're using pure active DR. So you set up pure storage system on-prem for your production data sets. And then we can provide target pure at the Recovery Point data center and then set up active DR. So you just actively asynchronously or potentially synchronously sending your production volumes over to the alternate compute facility. Then you can layer on top of that setting backup copies to us. So in the event that a disaster strikes, you have a clean, isolated environment to fail into. And so, just to reiterate here, how do we mitigate cybersecurity risks? So it's identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And obviously, the recovering is key to saving your business. So so we're going to go to the
no, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to ask, from a backup perspective, what are some best practices? And so I think this is a good place to talk about that.
Yep. Thanks. Right. So from a backup perspective, I'm taking you into the zip code of recovery here, the 32110 rule. And it's sort of a mantra for us. And it's a basic recommendation to have 3 copies of your data, 2 different media sets. Keep one of those media sets off site. One of those copies should be air-gapped, and that could be immutable object storage. You can use tape vaulting. Make sure that the tape is actually ejected from the tape library, otherwise it's still accessible. And of course, the zeros have 0 errors, so you need to test these backups. So, I mean, with the 3 copies of data, if you're using the pure flash array, say, you have your production data set, and then you can do a snapshot, and keep that immutable to keep your a copy on-prem. And then you can also use a data mover such as Veeam or Commvault or another backup vendor out there to make a backup set and then send a copy of that offsite. Like I said, keep that air-gapped, immutable, and then always test. Continue to test, validate your DR test plan. And I'm going to get into it in a few slides, but we offer a BPR service, which is a fully managed disaster recovery service. BPR stands for Business Process Resilience. So we'll touch on that in a few slides.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I really like that zip code formulation, that 32110. The old 321 formula, I think, was getting sort of long in the tooth, and this is a nice rethinking of it. Andrew, maybe you can bring in the pure storage side of things. How do you view best practices and implement it with your technologies?
Yeah, happy to. So, ironically, this is a section where we decided to kind of cherry pick a little bit because there's so many different directions we could go, and a lot of them we go as well with Recovery Point too. There's things around replication technologies, there's backup protection stuff. Decided to focus in a little bit on some of the ransomware pieces here, just because One framework that I put out even before signs what we see here is a kind of a before, during, and after. Beforehand, it needs to be very simple to set up and maintain and implement. During, it needs to be non-compromisable by attackers that, like we said, may even try to get admin credentials. And then after, it's got to be fast to recover, planned out. So the first line of defense there that we look at is, like it says there, immutable snapshots on primary data. And you may be thinking, like, really? Snapshots? Snapshots have been around forever, right? Or maybe as long as I have, or we all have, I don't know, give or take, or various forms of them, okay? So what I say is snapshots on Pure is a little bit of a baseline. But they're what snapshots wanted to be when they grow up, if you will, in that you can take them instantly. You can make a lot of them. It's not unlimited, but it's in the tens of thousands, high tens of thousands, even sometimes past that, based on the platforms, okay? Snapshots, because of on Pure, the underlying virtualization of the data and the metadata, snapshots are the same thing from a metadata standpoint as volumes. So when you take them, there's no space consumed, there's no performance impact. They have the same capabilities as volume. They've always been immutable. So if you take a snapshot of the data, you can't modify it. Nobody, even the local admin. You might be able to delete it. We'll come back to that later, right? Because that's a threat vector, but you can't modify it. And when you make them, no space, and then as they diverge from the baseline, they are compressed, deduplicated. And then we think about recovery, especially in a ransomware scenario where, say, it's actually, we think about potentially having to recover 30, 50, 70% of the data center, huge amounts of the data center very quickly, a mass restore scenario, if you will. Well, copying a snapshot to a new volume is instant. You can do that on one volume, on 10 volumes. It's the same metadata construct. We actually have customers. There's a blog post about a hospital that actually recovered from just Pure Snapshot. So this is a scenario before we've talked about admin credential compromise, heaven forbid. Okay, right? But even there. So, and actually, I'm thinking of two other customers I was on the phone or Zoom with last week, Zoom, WebEx, giving full to all the platforms. So this is actually a core piece because of how much better these were. Now, this is not the only piece. And this is where we can talk about protecting data in place, the primary data, right, where it lives, primary data, application data. But not all data is on Pure. Let's just be real, right? Or we should have a defense in depth. And even in the last line of defense, we should have multiple layers in that line of defense, right? Kind of thing too. So this is where we also focus on better backups and working with improving backup architectures, not doing rip and replace, but actually being able to go and partner with so many different backup partners. Many of these Recovery Point works with as well, right? We have multiple partners and they have multiple partners, right? But we work together a lot. That's why we're on this today. Okay. And the goal here from a backup standpoint is providing a fast recovery tier for the most recent 5, 7, 14 days of data. So you can bring that back. And we've tested this out actually at over a petabyte per day. It can actually go higher than that from a Flash Blade standpoint. I'm not actually talking products very much, and that's intentional, right? Kind of thing. There was the bottleneck was actually on the 7 front-end storage arrays that we had. So this is a fast recovery tier that we can help. You were mentioning Veeam earlier, Jeff. So we do a lot with that. Mm-hmm. And Veeam actually has what they call Scale Out Backup Repository. The acronym for that is SOBER, which is one of the best IT acronyms ever. We can talk about being sober and scaling sober and all that, during the business day. So helping augment backup and recovery infrastructures for speed of recovery. Now, the last piece that I haven't hit on, and I kind of hammered on it earlier, so if you're playing the at-home game and you're listening along and thinking through it, you're thinking about what about if someone gets admin access to a Pure system or the backup system? That's hard, right? Because there's got to be admin credentials. There's got to be admins for this stuff. That's where we like to talk about, sometimes I'll call it Immutability Plus. The formal feature name is what's called Safe Mode. There's actually a little bit of a fun origin story here. We had a customer that came to us about 4 years ago or so, 4 to 5 years ago. They had gone and purchased a lot of Pure equipment, and one of the reasons was around simplicity, and that sometimes that can bear itself play out in multiple ways. But for them, they were looking at kind of the classic admin per FTE per petabytes managed new employee for how many systems they can manage kind of thing, and they were really happy with the results. It was great. Then they did a risk analysis. And they flipped it around, like the stuff that you see like in a financial 10K, like what are the stated risks of the company kind of thing. And they realized that one person, the amount of data that they could destroy if they went out the door unhappy was a problem, like a very big financial problem. Like how many SLAs and contracts do they have to pay out? Not that they didn't trust their people, okay, but if someone happened to be the classic rogue admin scenario, how bad could it be? Scary. What happened? What we realized is, as Pure, we could help them with this because on Pure systems, It's always been the case that there's a two-step data deletion process. That's what safe mode is built on top of. It's built on top of our immutable snapshots. And when you destroy data, snapshots, volumes, protection groups, it actually is where you have to go and destroy and then eradicate. That was originally built as an admin get out of jail free card. That when you destroyed something, it sat around for 24 hours on the array. You realize, like, what did it mean to do that? Like, I didn't have enough coffee, or the naming convention was confusing, whatever else. I could get it back instantly within 24 hours. We realized we could take that capability, harden that final data removal step, extend how long things stay in the eradication bin, the recycle bin, if you will. So pure support has to be involved if needed. So sometimes calling it permissions air gap, huge respect for the air gaps that you were talking about earlier, Jeff. There's also sometimes the term air gap thrown around in the industry that's more of a network drawbridge, if you will, kind of thing, which usually adds a lot of complexity and cost and slow recovery. So sometimes I'll call this a permissions air gap, the final deletion of the data on array. It has to age out for a certain amount of time. Not even an attacker or an admin can override that. And this can apply to primary data, backup data, log data. We need to protect our logs as well. And we don't charge for this feature. Now, it will, in some cases, consume additional space. Okay, let's be real about that. But this follows the evergreen story that I mentioned before of features being included. Now, what we need from an overall protection standpoint, very good features and capabilities. And I'm comfortable from previous lives, like this is a unique combination of stuff, but it also needs to be a much bigger solution story. And yeah, that might be a segue to the final section, but even if we weren't going there with Jeff and with Scott, this is what I say to customers. When we have these capabilities, it needs to be wrapped into a larger picture, a larger solution. I think back to you, Scott.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, that was great, Andrew. So yeah, let's do that sort of rubber meeting the road section now. A lot of what we talked about so far, involves the generalized problems of ransomware and backup, and let's get into what you guys do as partners that offers something special. So I'll just throw that out there. Who wants to start on that one?
Sure, I'll jump in there,
Scott. I'll let Jeff dive in there, and then I'll go next. Yeah, good.
Thanks. Great.
Yep, thanks. So, we love Pure, and we're building out this partnership. So, just putting a lot more orange on the floor, basically. But Pure's got a great design, a great solution for us. I talked about it earlier, but the active DR is really critical and reliable component to the software. You can set up set up the flash array as a primary data site, and then set up active DR and send your data sets asynchronously over to our data center. And then we have the capability on top of that to add orchestration and automation. So, the Pure's interface is great for that. So they've got a full suite of REST API calls you can make, plus the CLIs is really friendly. So we've built some solutions on top of that just to be able to do automated failover for clients to do. It's part of the BPR service, and as part of that, we've integrated the Pure technology, so we can orchestrate a failover of a client's volumes, their primary data sets, and bring everything back online, bring all the VMs back online, bring all of the AX systems back online, and then cycle through the recovery procedures that we would need to take to bring that client's businesses back to life. And it's not only just for DR, but we can cycle through that over and over again, and we'll do that on a quarterly basis and be able to provide reports on your true recover time objectives. A lot of people might think they can be able to fail over and recover. They have some thought that I can recover in a day or 4 hours or whatever it may be, but we can show them what the true RTO is, and then we can show them what our service is capable of. So, adding the automation and the professional services on top of the great technology that Pure provides us, this kind of rolls up into a high quality disaster recovery service. So, go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, cool. I mean, you hit on so many good pieces, because this is a huge conversation. There's the fundamental product capabilities, wrapping that around from an API and automated standpoint. I get a lot of questions about how do I recover at scale. Some of that's an automated thing. Some of it's a process thing. Some of it's a partner thing, having the right processes with the partner or helping bake that out. I know that you even do a good bit of what I used to do in the past around kind of consulting and run books and some of that kind of stuff, like helping people figure out where the rubber meets the road. So our goal, my goal, and being now putting my pure hat explicitly on, is to provide the underlying capabilities that are simple enough to not get in your way, customers' way, but also knowing it needs to integrate into a larger picture. I think back over to you for the last little bit.
Thanks. So, I mean, what I was talking about there was we're able to really show you what your real recovery time objective is, and then improve upon that. So, just a little bit of a deep dive on the BPR service, but it's fully managed recovery, and we offer it in two levels. So it's foundational, which is the system level recovery, and then enterprise is the full application recovery, end to end. And we're really truly able to deliver on your RTOs and your RPOs. So we can wrap service level agreements around this service. If you've got tier 1 systems, you need them up in say 4 hours. We'll be able to show you what the true RTO is, and then work with the technology, Pure, the data movers, Veeam, and the others to improve the recoverabilities, and then cycle through that to make sure that we work out all the anomalies, including just the standard changes that come throughout the year from the operations teams. So that's what BPR is. It's business process resilience. It's an always-on platform, and it really takes you to the next level of disaster recovery. And this final slide from me this is our technology stack. So we're solutions agnostic, but we love Pure. But we work with we have Veeam and Commvault out there. We are a partner of those, so we're a service provider for Veeam Cloud Connect services, and the other system or other vendors out there.
And even just being real for folks that are watching it.
I'm sorry, what was that, Andrew?
I was being real. Even for folks that are watching, it's like some of those logos don't go with the Pure logo, but that's cool. And this is the way the partnerships work, kind of thing. We work together a lot, and actually having that additional perspective, both when I was on the partner side and otherwise, that's what frankly makes you so valuable, is that you don't just do one thing and focus on one thing. And I can say I used to do it in the past, but I'll be real about what company I work for now, but you can bring that broader perspective up and down and across the stack kind of thing. And even with that, we've chosen to be on this session together. So, hey.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have to reach across all technology platforms. I mean, that's where I was saying we'll take on the heterogeneous environment. The mix of the IBM Big Iron, the x86, the cloud services, whatever it may be. We enjoy the challenge and just designing to help you to improve your disaster recovery services.
Super. Well, we've got a lot of questions that have come in from the audience. So are you guys ready to get to some of those?
Good.
Great.
Absolutely.
All right. And I'll go ahead and move forward to this slide here that has contact information for Jeff and Andrew. And in the meantime, Jeff, one of these first questions here is for you. What are some strategies for threat protection?
Sure. Threat protection. So that's a big landscape. And, it's just some of the basics really are having an endpoint detection software in place. You could take it as far as a managed detection and response type system. But, somebody like a vendor like CrowdStrike or SentinelOne, we like SentinelOne, is quality, and that's sort of a first line of defense against your endpoints. Having some intrusion protection and detection services, some of those vendors I had out there, Palo Alto or Cisco, for firepower for your perimeter defense, and then really having that like I was saying earlier, having an accurate asset database and just performing vulnerability scanning so you know where your gaps are. Those are probably some basic critical pieces to have in place.
Okay. Great. This next one, maybe Andrew, you can address this one. They're asking, does the recovery point pure storage joint solution support large heterogeneous environments and legacy systems?
So I'll take a first crack at it because it's a joint thing. I definitely want Jeff to chime in. The overall goal is yes. The way that we approach that, if systems, let's be real, if the data is on pure systems in various ways, we can do some neat things with replication and moving it around. From a backup standpoint, we can augment that. So we do definitely, we recognize it's a big world, and sometimes there's either legacy stuff out there or other pieces out there that we have to adapt in various ways. So the overall answer is yes. It depends based on the pieces I mentioned. I know there's some kind of up the stack solution pieces there, Jeff, as well, as far as kind of how you think about heterogeneous and legacy systems.
Yeah, I mean, I can just speak from my experience today. I mean, we're supporting pure storage flash arrays, and clients are replicating their systems to us. That's a mix of x86 and AIX. So I mean, that's pretty heterogeneous right there. And then we incorporate automation on top of that to bring those volumes online and mount the hardware to attach to those volumes and bring the OSs up and just orchestrate the entire recovery of the solution. So yeah, definitely. We're well integrated.
Okay, super. Hey, this next question comes from Nick, who says hello from Toronto. So hello back to you in Toronto. That's great. A backup can be protected at the hardware level or at the software level. Not to be accessible via network, but only via a certain backup application. And Nick is wondering about pros and cons or opinions when it comes to that sort of hardware or software level backup.
I'll dive in there a little first, if that's all right. And I'm going to play I was a backup admin out of college because no one else wanted to run backups. I think I left that out of my intro earlier, right, kind of thing. So backup exec to Tivoli storage manager to Commvault to EMC products. And I'm not just being real. And some of these we work with and don't in my current role. So in some way you could say that actually everything is software at some level until we potentially get down to actual tape and being totally offline and immutable. If we talk about a ransomware scenario, we have to take the subset of stuff that we can recover large amounts of data very quickly. Okay, so we're talking about, in that case, usually stuff that has to be relatively online. I'm not trying to leave tape entirely out of that conversation, but we were talking about if you've got to restore 50% of your data center from tape. So then we get into how can I get the immutability characteristics in similar ways, almost get the air gap type stuff with systems that are online. So that's where I do wander to. There's no way that you can do that truly at a hardware level without going to systems like Worm that usually aren't as fast to recover. So it turns into a software level at a level of separation. This is either a safe mode, this is immutability. So you can get to that outcome. And for better or worse, sometimes the hardware-software dichotomy starts to kind of fade away. It's more about the immutability, air gap capabilities that I'm going for on primary data or backup data. So hopefully that's not insulting anyone, the answer. And I want to let you add on, Jeff, too, or not, either way.
I think you're right on the money. I mean, with a worm type technology for hardware, it's gonna be a slower type recovery anyways because it's coming from tape. So it's really, I think, maps back to what your RTOs and what your recovery time objectives are. You may blend a level of replication, continuous data replication type software solution with a recovery. The stuff that's not as critical, you can keep it iced on cold storage or out on tape, and take 48 hours or up to a week to bring that back.
Okay, super. This next question comes from Ajaz, who's asking. He's asking about the snapshot replication. He says, "Is it byte-to-byte disk level replication or data-based replication?"
Hopefully, I'm not being a putz, Jeff, but I think I'll start on that one because it feels a little bit like a pure question. So, or it's down the stack there. As we talk about, say, active cluster. Yeah, active cluster, active DR, async. So these are the snapshot-based replication is transferring all unique data either if it's on an async snapshot basis, it's just doing the differences, deduplicated and compressed. If it's on a synchronous basis or active DR, it's transmitting it, in seconds potentially or less, and there's still compression applying. So I get a little bit kind of picky with the byte-to-byte disk level replication. Everything is on the other end. Depending on async versus near sync or synchronous, everything may or may not be getting sent if the same data was already there. And then there's a degree of compression and deduplication in play. It really comes down to what pipe size do I need, and can I afford it, and what's my RPO as far as how quickly it's getting sent across the way. But there's a huge amount of validation to make sure that the data's on the other side, because otherwise there's no point. Like, it's got to be good.
Great. This next one comes from Larry, and this is an interesting question, especially with some of the discussion that we've had about dwell times and things like that. Larry's wondering, how can you determine which point to recover to? What are the best practices there to make sure that you're not recovering the malware that's going to let them right back in?
Well,
if you want to go
I
first,
can take
Jeff,
that.
yeah, go ahead.
If you want, Andrew.
Yeah, go first. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, please. Then I'll jump in.
So, I mean, the question was like, where do you recover back before dwell time, or?
Yeah, I get the specifics of the question were, how can you determine which point to recover to?
Okay.
I'm interpreting that question as like a ransomware related question, where you're trying to restore.
So, I mean, so recovering from ransomware, in my experience, is not really that fast. It can be, if you're able to catch it, bring stuff up in an isolated environment. But a lot of times when you get hit, everything gets encrypted, and you just have to stop and be like, okay, I have to pull the cable out of this switch. I have to completely isolate that network, and first you stop the spread of the ransomware, and then you get into recover mode. When do I bring that data back? What point do I bring that data up? And, how do I know it's clean? If you don't know, you might not know right away what the dwell time is. And so you're going to need an isolated environment to bring the systems back to life, and then do a scan, start scanning for the cyber threat. You probably will know at that point where, like, as Andrew was showing you the life cycle of the attack, you'll definitely know when you're hit, like when the encryption kicks off. So you can roll back maybe the day before, the hour before, whatever it may be, but bring that up in an isolated environment so you can try to sanitize the system. If that data is that critical that you need that from right before the attack hit, then that's where you would start to try to do the restoration. Another thing I see that it's really that a lot of times companies they're outgunned. You don't have a complete security team that can jump in there. The operations team's got 100 different things going on. You may have to pull in a third party forensics type team, to help you to bring these systems back online. So that's just some of my experience that I've seen.
I'll tag on there a little too, if it's all right. To piggyback on some of the pieces you're mentioning, Jeff, I often think about the point of infiltration. That's where we need to go back to and potentially analyzing and looking at logs. Logging is critical inside a customer environment, making sure those logs are protected and available, because there's the point of encryption. The point of encryption, to Larry's question, is we want to recover to as close as we can right before the point of encryption, like you said, in an offline environment, because there may still be rootkits and malware. We're trying to get the data before the point of encryption, and then we look at logging that goes back to the point of infiltration to figure out what do we need to clean out. And sometimes that's incident response teams internally, forensics teams. Sometimes it's companies on retainer capabilities that Recovery Point has, or even some companies that just literally all they do is incident response to help figure out how attackers got in, because that's all they do. Like, literally, that's all they do. And then we and you and they partner with them, kind of thing. So the key that I see usually is pulling apart that kind of point of encryption from the point of infiltration, and making sure that the recovery process is offline, and that you may need to do it multiple times. because you may have a bunch of teams running in parallel. Like we figured out they got in here and they put in this thing and we cleaned that up. And oh, there's this other thing we need to clean up. We need to try again, or we need teams working in parallel to bring virtual machines back. So to your point, some parts we want to be as fast as possible, the actual data recovery process. Other parts can just end up being manual. You've got to clean out the manual stuff that intelligent, malicious humans put into your environment. That can't necessarily, some of those stages can't be automated, but you want the ones that can be automated or be accelerated. So you're not waiting every time you need to iterate the restore process to be another day or another 2 days to try again. So.
Yeah.
Those intelligent, malicious humans are the tricky kind. Yeah. No, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like that framework, having the response plan is just comes back to that. It's critical to have the plan in place and then just execute through that plan on a practice or tabletop type basis. The more you're just comfortable with what you need to do, it'll just come more naturally when that event happens.
Yeah, that framework, is definitely great to consider. And also, I like to hear you talking about the tabletop, and testing the plan, because, that's, you really don't have a plan if you haven't tested it. I do want to pop up a poll quickly as we continue our Q&A here for a couple more minutes, but it's about what additional information you'd like on the Recovery Point Pure Storage solution. And you can click, all that apply. So, I'll just go ahead and leave that up there. This next question is from Ned. And Ned is asking, the AV scans are very slow, take a very long time to run. Do you have any recommendations on that?
I'm going to take my Pure hat off for a little bit if I'm wearing one. Pretend I was wearing one. I'm taking it off, just because this is now more just general stuff. I used to actually run AV servers, and you'd see things around a long time. You'd integrate AV into file servers or storage devices with ICAP and other things, and you'd be like, okay, now my storage resiliency is at the mercy of my antivirus server stability. Like, ooh, that's a problem. So in general, probably what I've seen is more of, instead of on the server side, it's more endpoint protection, and even in some cases, next generation network endpoint protection. I'm not going to pretend that's what I do for a day job, but just from a general standpoint, I've seen that it's more about advanced network protection and looking for things that are outside of normal, and then a kind of next gen endpoint protection because of the volumes of data, especially AV scans. Any storage system, Pure's great, right, kind of thing, but scanning through that kind of volume of data that we have an increase of over the last 5-10 years, a straight up scan process becomes more and more challenging. So that's what I got.
Okay, super. I think this next question is for Jeff. Is there an easy way to do backup validation?
It's customized, right? Like it depends on what you're using, the data mover wise, storage wise, and your recovery time objectives. But if you use our BPR service, obviously, I would love to see everybody use that, because it's really give us the work, give us the allow us to handle the logistics of the testing and the failover and the planning and the repetition and the cycling through of we call them run books. We build run books based on the recovery plans from the client, but those kind of things take a lot of time and planning to do right. And then there's a life cycle to that, right? I mean, throughout the year, your ops teams are making changes. There's new networks popping up and software's upgraded, systems are decommissioned, things like that. So all of those things have to make it into DR. And so you have to track that those changes are happening, make sure they reflect in DR, and then continue to test to make sure that you're still recoverable. And even if all of those changes have made it and you think you have everything locked up, there still could just be you didn't plan for Microsoft Patch Tuesday, and you can't. All of those systems got patched. You failed over, and you have to wait for them to finish installing patches. And that could take a while. So, just continually testing the plan that you have in place, or using our full managed service is a good way to go.
Okay. Well, it looks like we're running up on time here, but I'll direct this to Jeff. If somebody wants to get started with the recovery point and pure storage solution, what do you recommend?
Oh, well, reach out to us. We'll be happy to have the discussion with you. We love to just talk about what you're doing today and how we can help improve the recovery services. Glad to kind of dive into your RTOs and RPOs and tier ones through X systems and, what kind of storage platforms you run. Like I said earlier, the heterogeneous environments, we love to tackle those. Anything that's just a mix of IBM, mainframe, x86. We excel at that kind of stuff. So, yeah, we're always happy to have the conversation around disaster recovery.
Okay. Great. Well, Jeff and Andrew, I just want to thank both of you guys for coming on. This has been a great discussion. Really appreciate all the insights and for all your answers with the questions, and really appreciate the update on Pure and on Recovery Point and on the partnership.
Thank you. Thanks, Scott. And Andrew, that was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And we do have one more piece of business. It's the $300 Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that gift card is Emil Einat from Pennsylvania. So congratulations to Emil. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, again, I want to thank Jeff and Andrew for this presentation. And I'd like to thank Recovery Point and Pure Storage for making this event possible. And last but not least, I'd like to thank all of you for attending and for your questions. That concludes today's event. Have a great rest of your day.